What's going on, everybody? Mr. Barry here. We're going to go ahead and jot down some quick notes for ourselves based off of lesson 1.1, which is creating definitions, the very first topic in our very first unit. So with this, my goal is to just have some things that we can kind of collectively put down as some background knowledge on some of the activities you already answered and then what we're going to check after the fact. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to talk about definitions here, which is kind of funny to talk about and define definitions, but that's what we're going to do. So what exactly makes a good definition? So we'll definitely talk about this and then go back and look at some of the examples, which is funny because good definitions are, in fact, based off of examples. And, not only examples, but also non-examples as well. And sometimes non-examples could actually help us better off understand and be able to discuss what makes a specific thing, what it is in a definition, that show what's included and what's excluded. So specifically, if we're going back to a previous situation that we talked about examples, and we had this problem where I went ahead and polled all of you. This situation where we were going ahead and talking about shoes. So we didn't really have a clear-cut definition. You had written one yourself, but we would use examples such as shoes. And also we had some non-examples, which were things that you would categorize as not being a shoe. So if I had to take a guess, definitely the sock is something that you said was not an example of a shoe. And then there might have been some debate with some of the other things, like I can most certainly see a debate for a flip-flop or a covering of sorts. Potentially the rollerblades would have been an interesting conversation. But we really make good definitions by providing ourselves examples and non-examples. And if we can figure that out, that would certainly help our cause. Within the actual good definitions, we want to go ahead and make sure we can kind of sort of think about two things that make something a good definition. So usually in the front end is a way for us to classify the specific word that we're talking about. So classifying something helps us understand what category or group is it in. Specifically in this situation, we will go up here and talk about the definition. So if you can go back and maybe highlight some things here for yourself in terms of the definition that dictionary.com gave us, which is technically a pretty old definition, but we can see in the front end of that definition an external covering for the human foot. So very kind of plain Jane with that, but we would all agree that shoes, generally speaking, cover human feet. So that helps us classify that and helps us understand, put it in a specific category, something that's going to cover a human foot, would most certainly be a shoe. And the second part of something that would make a good definition would be where we're going to differentiate things. Differentiate. So to differentiate, pretty straightforward. How is it different from other things in the category? So we just got done talking about classifying something by putting it into a category. Now we're going to kind of separate it from other things that could potentially be in that category. So there was a little bit of wiggle room previously here in this definition. And now we want to go ahead and at the beginning of this definition, we had the classification, the covering for the human foot, but there's plenty of things that cover human feet. Now we got to go ahead and kind of establish what specifically makes it a shoe. And granted, again, this is kind of an old definition. We're not always locked into leather. So it says usually of leather and consisting of more or less stiff or heavy sole. So I would say that sole part's probably a big deal. And a lighter upper part ending a short distance above, at, or below the ankle. So in that definition for dictionary.com, they're pretty specific on the location of where it's ending for a shoe. But regardless, again, with the front end of that definition being how we classify something, that back end really helps us differentiate between other things that would cover for human feet, and helps us differentiate in what makes something specifically a shoe.